Hi and welcome back to another video. Today is going to be a bit of a chatty one, so before we get started, go and grab yourself a warm cup of coffee or tea and then meet me back here. If you're new here, my name is Kaylee. I use this channel to talk about what living intentionally looks like for me. However, my life was not always lived in an intentional way. Everything changed in 2023. And today I'd like to talk a little bit more about why that is. So if you want to hear my journey to living a more intentional life and maybe find some solace in a similar story or some inspiration to start moving in a more intentional way yourself, please keep watching. So hopefully you've gone and grabbed a nice cup of tea or coffee. I have a cup of decaf coffee here. Let's jump in. So like I said in the intro, I didn't always live a super intentional life. There were definitely things that I did because it made me feel good, that I did because it was something that I loved, that I spent my time and money on because it felt intrinsic to who I was, but I wasn't choosing those things intentionally. I was just doing it as it felt good to do it. And unless you've gone through a little bit of the mental journey that I have, you might not understand the difference of those two things. So we can do things that feel good, and we can do things that feel aligned with who we are and the goals that we have, but it's not necessarily intentional. Intentionality, or being intentional, means doing something on purpose, doing it deliberately. And I was not doing much of anything deliberately for a long time. I was doing things that felt right, that felt good, that felt aligned to who I was and the things that I wanted to do and accomplish in my life. But I wasn't doing anything really intentionally and really on purpose. I was kind of hoping that this conglomeration of decisions and motivations would get me to whatever the end point is, or the first end point on a long journey of different endpoints. And for a long time, I thought that intentional living looked like very strict and rigorous living, a very strict and rigorous schedule, that it looked like the things that you see of being that girl or becoming her. And that was never something that I felt drawn to, because I knew that that would only perpetuate this thinking of myself in a negative way, or in a way that I would never measure up to whatever this expectation was out here of living an intentional life. But what I've also learned is that living an intentional life is incredibly personal. You have to curate what intentionality looks like for you. That's what I've done. I've curated what intentionality looks like for me. I post about it because I hope to find like-minded people, but our journeys of intentional living don't have to look the same. Our morning routine and our evening routine and everything that we do in between, how we spend our money, how we spend our time, doesn't have to be the same in order for us both to be living an intentional life. So I want to share more of the story of how I got here, and it's a deep story. I'm a little nervous, if I'm honest, to start diving into some components of the story, because they're very tender pieces of me and very vulnerable pieces of me that I don't typically share with those outside of my bubble. So I want to talk a little bit more about how burnout and grief and intense mental health struggles turned into me living a more intentional life, very slowly and very unintentionally. When I was talking to my husband about this concept of a video, he said, I think you have to share how we unintentionally became more intentional about the way that we live our life. And I love that, because there was no intention, there was no purpose or deliberation in making some of these choices. They happened quick and they happened fast, or they happened slow and over the course of time, and then just shifted into a new way that we approach literally every day and literally every decision. So what was the breaking point? What was the thing that really the catalyst for this change? I was super burnt out. I've talked a little bit about my previous job before. It's been almost 2 years now that I have left that position. And it's honestly a little hard to reconnect to those feelings because I'm so far removed and I'm so much happier not being in that position. However, I'm going to try. I was incredibly burnt out. I recognize now that I probably should have left that job a year and a half or so before I actually did leave. I was overworked. I was underpaid. And I know that that's a story for a lot of people, but it wasn't even that I, recognized, oh, I'm overworked, I'm overpaid, I need to leave. I recognized I'm overworked, I'm overpaid, I have too many responsibilities, and I reached out multiple times to multiple different people on the ladder above me. Hey, I need help. I am drowning. Can I hire an assistant? Can I take some of this off of my plate? Can my pay be increased? Can we change literally anything to make me feel more supported? And the answer was consistently no. And it was no for probably a year and a half. So again, when I say I should have left earlier, I should have left earlier. But it was hard because I was making the larger salary out of myself and my husband, and it didn't feel like it was possible for us to survive if I left my job. And in this time, I started getting my Enneagram coaching certification. I had known the Enneagram and used it personally for a number of years, since 2017. At the end of 2022, beginning of 2023, I got certified in Enneagram coaching and started working with clients. And I started recognizing this pattern with my clients that they would get stuck ping-ponging between what's called two centers of intelligence. I'm not going to go into the full structure of the Enneagram right now. That's not the space for this, but there's 3 centers of intelligence: the head, the heart, and the body. And I noticed clients getting stuck in decision making and getting stuck between 2 different centers. So I was curious about how that looked for me. And was I stuck between 2 centers? And I now know that we all have a dominant, a secondary, and a repressed center of intelligence. And it depends on the person. It has nothing to do with your main type. Every single person is different when it comes to this. But I was stuck between my head and my heart. I would feel something in my heart, and then I would use my head to logic myself out of the feeling and never make a move on doing anything until I had to. I literally was in a coaching session. I was being coached by someone, and we were working on creating a plan to delegate some things outside of myself so that I could focus on building a coaching business while also still keeping my job. And we were talking about how difficult that was becoming. I wasn't getting support. The people that I was trying to delegate to were dropping the ball, and I felt compelled to pick up the ball. All of those things. And she simply said, "What if you quit your job?" And my body, we were doing it virtually, and my body lurched towards the camera. And I was like, "Is that possible?" It was an immediate response of, "Yes, please," even though I had denied that to myself for so long. So I think that was probably a Friday. And by Monday morning the next week, I had decided to go ahead and put in my notice. Now, I put in a 2-month notice. Don't recommend if you don't have to, but I did do that. And there wasn't an immediate change. There wasn't an immediate relief. I actually still felt quite heavy because I had nothing lined up for afterwards. And I kind of had the feeling that I needed to have nothing lined up for afterwards because of how drained I was. Fast forward a couple of weeks, and in the middle of May, I lost someone who I've known since childhood to suicide. And in the following 2 or 3 weeks, I would lose 2 more people connected to my life in some way to suicide. I share that because it was an integral part to my need to change something. The job was definitely a huge shift in a really, really good direction. But this was showing me, hey, you need to live in a way that feels right and that every choice you make feels intentional. And I actually chose the word intention or intentional for the year in 2023, having no idea about all of these shifts. But when I chose that word, I really didn't know what that would look like. I just wanted to be more intentional in general, but never actually made shifts in that direction. When those deaths happened, my entire focus became on survival. Just surviving one day to the next. I have my own mental health struggles with depression, and it reignited a lot of feelings that I hadn't felt in a very long time. So in the surviving day to day, because also I was still at my job because I gave them a 2-month notice. So I was still trying to function in that role at my job, and I was trying to survive, and I was trying to think up what was going to come next. So there was no master plan here. There was no let's change my life over 300 days. There was no can't wait to put in motion these things or taking a sabbatical or any of that. It was let's hope we wake up tomorrow and are able to do something. That was the goal. So slowly but surely, I realized that we needed to make some changes in our home for me to feel like I was showing up the way I wanted to show up to every day, to make me feel like I could do some of the things that I intended to do day to day. So the first thing was we moved our TV out of our living room. So the way that our house was set up, I don't know if we have any pictures of our previous home, but we had a living room and then a dining area and then our kitchen on one side of the house. And then we had this little like nook room almost. There was like a half wall separating it from the rest of the house. And that's what we used as our office, and had a chair over there to read in. But I felt like if I'm going to get anything done, if I'm going to have any type of productivity time in this house, the TV cannot be the central point, because I would turn it on and either start binging a show or jump into a video game and be gone for the rest of the day. So we moved the TV and our couch out of the living room and into the little nook space. So it was literally just our couch and our TV, and we ended up putting our TV onto our dresser out of our bedroom, which created a lot of open space in our bedroom, which was also great. So then in our room, we only had a bookshelf, our bed, and 2 nightstands. That was the only furniture we had in there. And in the living room, we had the thing that our TV now sits on. If you've seen my apartment tour video, you know what I'm talking about. And 2 chairs. And with the 2 chairs in that room, slowly but surely, one, I started to become a little bit more productive. I was able to do more in the day, specifically regarding starting my business and getting things rolling for that. Buying this little table that all of this is sat on right now was part of that, because it allowed me to sit in a more comfortable space and then pull the table to me and work from a comfy chair. Slowly but surely, we stopped going into the TV room every evening after dinner, and we started to sit in the 2 chairs. My husband started reading physical books, which he never did before. So we would sit in there and read, or we would sit in there and talk. And it created a more intentional way of connecting between us as husband and wife in our home, and a way for me to connect to the space when I was there alone during the day. The other thing that I did was I cooked more frequently. I cooked more at lunchtime and had like nice home cooked hot meal at lunch. And the pause in the middle of the day to do that was game changing. I also started to taper off the types of notifications that I allowed to come to my phone and the apps that I had on my phone. I don't think that I would say that I was more of a digital minimalist then. I definitely have moved into that more now. But I did notice I was intentionally getting rid of some clutter in the digital space, in my physical space. I think we purged the house, I don't know how many times at the beginning just to feel lighter. It helped me feel lighter. So over time, all of these small things that we did created a more intentional life without ever setting out to be intentional about that. Literally was just trying to survive, but naturally became more intentional. And naturally, each of these changes created more clarity and ease and connection with myself and with my husband. And slowly but surely, things in me began to heal. Things in my life began to feel good and fulfilling again. And I just can't stress enough that I was never setting out to be this super intentional person. I was just trying to feel human again. But being human again made me recognize how being more intentional about my humanity and about the way that I take up space in the world was shifting so many beliefs that I had about myself, so many beliefs I held about how I needed to show up in the world, how other people should show up in the world. All of that started shifting. It's never been about being perfect. It's never been about a set routine or a set structure. It was never about being the it girl. It was never about being a boss babe business owner. It was about remaining alive and connected to the world around me in a way that made me want to be alive. And so slowly, I began to be able to have more choice in the way that I responded to things that were happening around me versus reacting to everything on instinct and then being thrown into a really stressed out space. I still get stressed. I still have anxiety. I still have depression. All of those things are still a very real component of how I live day to day in the world. And because I'm more intentional and because I feel that I have choice in how I show up in the world and how I deal with my anxiety and how I deal with my depression. And because I do work for myself primarily and I am able to make the decision to stay in bed longer or to stay home and make 2 loaves of sourdough instead of going and being at the office from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. like I was doing before. There's so much choice. And even with my husband working a 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. job, he feels that he has more choice in the way that he shapes his day, in the way that we shape our life together, too. So this isn't just a me thing. It has drastically transformed the way that we as a partnership approach life. And so now choosing things more intentionally is so easy and creates room for expansion versus feeling like I'm constricting. I think some people, when they think about an intentional life, they do conjure up that image of the it girl or to be her. If you've seen this trend, you know what I'm talking about. And to me, that's just so far from the central idea of what living intentionally should be. It should be incredibly personal. It should shift and move and grow and shrink every day, every moment, depending on what feels right, not just for you, but thinking about the way that you interact with the world around you as well. I have so much more of a expansive view of the world and of people around me who don't look like me, who don't talk like me, who don't believe like me, who don't think like me, because of living more intentionally. That wouldn't have happened, I don't believe, if I wasn't living more intentionally, not in the way that it has. And so it's not just about choosing what feels good to you and damn everybody else. It's about what feels good to you in the viewpoint of the life that you're trying to create for yourself and for your future self. So we continually make decisions to shift into this more intentional life. Some of the minimalism tips that I talked about were also an effort of being more intentional. Not having a microwave, needing to take the time to heat up something, have it take a little bit longer, give a little bit more space and expansion to the day, rather than just everything being like, snap, 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 let's go, let's go, let's go, move to this thing, then this thing, then this thing, now we gotta go over here. Like, there are definitely times where we still rush around, but doing so in a way that feels really aligned or just because we ran out of time versus because we feel like we're running out of time. It's different. It's different. And you feel it in your body when you start making these decisions and when you start moving into a more intentional life. You feel the shift. You know the difference between feeling like you have to and knowing that you kind of put yourself in this position because you got out of bed a little bit later than you should have when it comes to rushing out the door, when you feel pressed for time. It's different. And so I'll probably do a video on things since that time where it was very unintentional, the way that we were shifting, and talk about the things that have been very intentional since shifting things in 2023. But I wanted to share this story because I think that it's a different experience than a lot of people that I see making content about having left a job and what they're doing now to be more, I don't want to use the word intentional because I don't even think that that's where a lot of their minds are in some of the videos that I've seen, but they left their job to create a more ideal version of their life or an ideal version of themselves, which can be intentional. This is definitely an ideal for me compared to where I was 2 years ago, but I didn't aspire to get here, and I had no idea on what sort of action plan I could have done to get here. And I don't think there is one. I don't think there is a roadmap. This is me sharing my story. This isn't a how-to or you should do all of these things. It's what can you do to create more expansion? What can you do to create more space, to be more intentional about the decisions that you make, about the space that you take up, about the way and where you spend your money, about what you do with your time? All of those things come together to create a more intentional, fulfilling life. But I can't tell you what that looks like for you. I know what it looks like for me, and that's part of why I've started this channel to, one, document it for myself, but two, to find like-minded people who are looking for more ways to create intentionality in their life or to connect and see what other people are doing so that we can learn from each other and encourage each other in this space of intentional living, because it is not the norm. And it can feel very isolating when people don't understand the decisions that you're making, especially when it comes to budgeting and not spending a lot of money or trying to get out of debt instead of accruing more debt. But I hope that this allows for a like-minded space. And if you resonate with any part of my story, if part of my story feels like your own, that you can see this and see other videos that I've created and find some ways that align with the intentionality that you want for your own life. It doesn't have to be a dramatic shift. It doesn't have to be the most beautiful shift or have a certain aesthetic the way that so many people seem to be pushing on social media. It can start in the middle of a really dark place. And one shift at a time, one decision at a time can start moving you in the direction of a more intentional life that feels very aligned to the place that you want to be years and years and years from now. So if this has resonated with you, if you have already started to make small shifts in your life to be more intentional, I would love for you to share them in the comments below. If there has been something that helps you feel more present and grounded in the moment, that helps you feel a bit of clarity and safety in the craziness that is our world today, I would love to hear about it. I'm sure other people would too. Thanks so much for being here. I'm glad that I have some other people on this intentional living journey with me. Until next time.